Picture this. You're sitting in a company-wide presentation at Meta. Hundreds of your colleagues are tuned in. The speaker is mid-sentence, clicking through slides about the future of AI. And then, without warning, someone hijacks the live stream. Not with a technical glitch. Not with a prank with rage. The employee seizes control of the broadcast and starts cursing out executives by name. The AI division gets called the company's whore. A demand rings through the feed. Tell a specific executive that he is shit. And while this is happening, while the entire company watches in stunned silence, a scheduled presenter covers their face with both hands. They cannot watch their own event platform being weaponized against them. This was not a random outburst. This was a dam breaking after 18 months of structural pressure. And if you want to understand what happened at Meta, not the earnings calls, not the press releases, not the carefully worded internal memos, you need to understand what filled the reservoir behind that dam. Because what happened at Meta between late 2024 and mid-2026 is not a comeback story. It is arguably the most expensive pattern of institutional failure in corporate history. And once you learn to recognize that pattern, you will start seeing it everywhere. So what broke these people? In March of 2026, Meta created something called Applied AI Engineering. The name sounds bland, corporate even. But inside the company, employees gave it a different name. They called it the Gulag, and they called themselves draftees. As in military conscription, you do not volunteer, you get sent. Here is what that looked like on the ground. Approximately 6,500 senior engineers and product managers, that is roughly 1/10 of Meta's entire workforce, were told they were being transferred to this new unit. No choice, no discussion. Refuse and you are fired. Around the same time, Meta laid off another 8,000 people. Between the layoffs and the forced transfers, nearly 1 in 5 Meta employees was either cut or conscripted. Now, here is the part that shifts this from bad management to something genuinely strange. The work they were assigned to do. These were engineers who spent years building products used by billions of people, optimizing newsfeed algorithms, scaling global infrastructure, designing the interfaces you and I touch every day. Their new job, write 2 coding problems per week. That is it, 2 problems, to feed into AI training data. From building for 1 billion users to writing homework for a machine. And the management structure, if you can call it that. 1 manager for every 50 people. 50 to 1. Do the math on that and you realize something quickly. Functionally, nobody is managing anyone. It is not a team. It is a holding pen. CTO Andrew Bosworth later admitted this was a mistake and promised to bring the ratio down to about 20 to 1. But by then, the damage was done. Now, when a company does something this extreme, the natural question is who designed this system? Who looked at 6,500 of the world's most talented engineers and thought, yes, the best use of these people is 2 coding problems a week under a 50 to -1 management ratio. The answer is a name most people outside Meta have never heard. Maher Saba, 12-year Meta veteran, longtime deputy to CTO Andrew Bosworth, vice president of Reality Labs Foundations. And here is where the story takes a turn from drama into pattern recognition. Before Saba was put in charge of applied AI engineering in March 2026, he ran Reality Labs Foundations. That was the operational core of the metaverse bet, Horizon Worlds, the VR platform that was supposed to attract 1 billion users and ended up with about 300,000 monthly actives before being shut down in June of 2026. The same metaverse that burned through roughly $80 billion in cumulative operating losses since 2019. Saba oversaw Reality Labs during the period when it posted the worst quarter in its history. $6.02 billion lost in the final quarter of 2025 alone. So let me make sure I have this right. The person who helped burn $80 billion on one moonshot was put in charge of burning over $100 billion more on the next one. The same 50 to -1 management ratio that defined Reality Labs showed up in applied AI engineering because it was designed by the same person. This is not a personnel decision. This is an institutional blind spot. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If you step back and look at the pattern, really look at it, the similarities between the metaverse failure and the AI gamble are not coincidental. They are structural. With the metaverse, you had a top-down command structure that ignored internal feedback. You had escalating capital expenditure used as a substitute for product market fit. You had a communication strategy that defined dissent as disloyalty. Horizon Worlds launched with massive fanfare, got 5 years and roughly $80 billion in investment, and was quietly shut down in June 2026. The VR version killed entirely, with only the mobile app surviving. Zuckerberg's original promise of 1 billion users versus the reality of roughly 300,000 monthly actives. A 3,000 to -1 gap between promise and delivery. Now look at applied AI engineering. Top-down edict, no choice in transfer. Spend as strategy between $125 and $145 billion in capital expenditure for 2026 before proving any product value. Dismissal of internal criticism. Bosworth's initial response to employee complaints was, effectively, if you do not like it, quit. He later walked that back, but the instinct was there. Meta is not learning from failure. It is institutionalizing it. When the same management playbook fails at $80 billion scale, the correct response is not to run it again at $135 billion scale. But that is exactly what is happening. Same architects, same blueprints, same early warning signs already flashing. Let me put those numbers in perspective, because when you hear $135 billion, the human brain does what the human brain always does with big numbers. It nods and moves on. So let me break this down differently. Meta's 2026 capital expenditure guidance lands somewhere between $125 and $145 billion. That is nearly double what they spent in 2025. At the midpoint, it works out to roughly $276,000 every single minute. Every minute, day and night. Weekends, holidays. $276,000 per minute on AI infrastructure. Reality Labs, the metaverse division, continues to bleed alongside this. Q4 2025 was its worst quarter in history at $6.02 billion lost. Q1 2026 added another $4.03 billion in losses against just $402 million in revenue. You do not need to be a financial analyst to see the asymmetry there. And the stock market has noticed. Meta shares are down about 25% from their 52-week high around $796, now trading in the $590 to $620 range. This is despite reporting 33% year-over-year revenue growth in Q1 2026, a genuinely impressive number. The market is pricing in something the earnings statements do not show. JP Morgan downgraded the stock to neutral at the end of April, and the language they used was specific, limited visibility. That is analyst speak for we cannot see where this money is going or when it is coming back. Chris Cox, Meta's Chief Product Officer, the company's 13th employee, someone who has been there since 2005, described the working environment in a way that I think captures the contradiction perfectly. He said it felt like running a marathon in a hailstorm. Your teammates are getting replaced and someone is filming it. He also said AI is neither a god nor a devil. A quiet pushback against leadership's relentless hype cycle. When your own CPO is using metaphors about hailstorms and replacement teammates, the problem is not in the quarterly numbers. It is in the walls. Now, if Meta was spending $135 billion and producing world-beating AI models, you could at least make an argument. Aggressive, risky, but at least the output matches the input. That is not what happened. In April 2025, Meta released Llama 4 Maverick and submitted it to the LM-Messis Chatbot Arena, the industry's most watched AI benchmark. The submission ranked number 2 in the world, right behind the best models on the planet. Meta paraded this ranking in every press release and investor call, but there was a problem. The model Meta submitted to the benchmark was not the model Meta released to the public. The submitted version had been specially optimized, fine-tuned using DPO specifically to crush the benchmark tests. The version that developers and users actually received was a different model entirely. When independent testers ran the public version through the same benchmarks, it did not rank number 2. It did not rank in the top 10. It crashed to number 30 and below worse than multiple free, open weight alternatives that anyone can download. LM-Messis administrators took an almost unprecedented step. They publicly released over 2,000 battle data pairs and directly criticized Meta's submission tactics. In the AI benchmarking world, where diplomatic silence is the norm, that is the equivalent of standing up at a state dinner and calling someone a liar to their face. Now, I want to zoom out for a moment because this is bigger than Meta. The broader AI industry has a measurement crisis. LMS's leaderboard gaming is not unique to Meta, OpenAI. Google, Anthropic have all faced accusations of similar optimization tricks. It is eerily reminiscent of the dot-com era when companies inflated page views and eyeballs to attract investment during a period of zero real revenue visibility. When the metric replaces the meaning, the metric gets gamed. Every time. But Meta's case is uniquely damning because they lost the cover-up. Yann LeCun, Meta's chief AI scientist of 12 years, went on record in a Financial Times interview saying the benchmark scores were, and I am quoting, fudged a little bit. He admitted the team used different model versions to optimize for different tests. Think about what that sentence actually describes. A company submits a specially modified version to a test, gets a high score, and then releases a weaker version to the public while marketing the high score. If that structure sounds familiar, it should. It mirrors exactly what Volkswagen did with emissions testing. Optimize for the test. Hide the real product. Get caught. And that is the first warning sign in the pattern I want you to learn. When the organization's own conscience, its most senior scientist, a Turing Award winner, publicly admits the lie, the rot goes deeper than any benchmark can measure. The fraud is not the problem. The fraud is the symptom. If the Llama 4 benchmark fraud was the competitive dishonesty, what followed was the competitive collapse. Meta had a flagship model in development called Llama 4 Behemoth, 2 trillion parameters, positioned as Meta, answer to GPT-5 and Claude Opus. This was the model that was supposed to justify the entire infrastructure bet. The thing that would make $135 billion in spending look like foresight instead of folly. Originally scheduled for unveiling at LlamaCon in April 2025. It did not ship in April. It got pushed to June, then to fall, then to indefinitely. By the end of 2025, Behemoth was effectively cancelled. Resources pivoted to the next generation projects, codenamed Avocado and Mango, projects so early in development that the only thing concrete about them was their names. Every month Behemoth was delayed was a month Meta spent roughly $11 billion on infrastructure that had no flagship model to run on. The GPU fleet was being built for a product that did not exist. When Meta finally shipped something from its superintelligence labs era, a model called Muse Spark, released in April 2026, it scored 52 on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. That is respectable. Fourth place behind Gemini, GPT, and Claude. But it is not superintelligence. It is not the model that justifies $135 billion. It is a solid mid-pack entry from a company that spent like it was building a champion. And this brings me to the moment where the entire Meta AI saga crystallizes into a single, almost unbearable confrontation. Because behind the financial numbers and the benchmark scandals and the cancelled flagship models, there is a human drama that captures everything wrong with how this company approached the most important technological shift of our time. Yann LeCun, 65 years old, Turing Award winner. One of the 3 people the world calls the godfathers of AI. Chief AI scientist at Meta for 12 years. The institutional memory of everything the company knew about artificial intelligence. Alexandra Wang, 28 years old, founder of Scale AI. A brilliant entrepreneur, no question about that. And as of June 2025, LeCun's new boss. Let that sink in. A 65-year-old Turing laureate. Someone who has spent 4 decades advancing the field of artificial intelligence. Forced to report to a 28-year-old. Not because the 28-year-old out-published him. Not because the 28-year-old had deeper technical insight. But because Meta spent $14.3 billion, its second largest acquisition in history, behind only WhatsApp, to buy 49% of Wang's company and install him as Chief AI Officer, leading the newly created Superintelligence Labs. The confrontation happened. And the dialogue, reported by multiple sources, is the kind of thing you cannot make up. Wang told LeCun directly, "We are building superintelligence, not debating philosophy." LeCun fired back, "You cannot tell a researcher what to do, especially not a researcher like me." 2 sentences. In those 2 sentences, everything is compressed. The builder versus the thinker. The 28-year-old CEO versus the 65-year-old scientist. The LLM true believer versus the skeptic who publicly calls large language models a dead end on the path to superintelligence. An entire generational and philosophical war fought in 2 lines of dialogue. LeCun resigned in November 2025. And then, in January 2026, he gave the longest interview of his career, 3 hours with the Financial Times. He went scorched earth, called Meta's new leadership completely LON-pilled, confirmed the Llama 4 benchmark manipulation in detail, revealed internal dynamics that Meta would have preferred stayed buried. He now runs his own lab, Amy Labs, valued at $3 to $5 billion, pursuing world models, the approach Meta abandoned when it went all in on large language models. Meta did not just lose a scientist. It lost its institutional conscience. The one person who could have stood up and said, this benchmark strategy is categorically wrong, or this talent strategy is systematically destroying our culture, was the same person the new leadership told to stop debating philosophy. When you silence the conscience, you guarantee the crisis. Every time, that is not philosophy. That is physics. And LeCun was not an isolated case. He was the leading edge of a talent hemorrhage that, when you look at the aggregate data, is almost hard to believe. Meta's AI talent retention rate is 64%, dead last among major AI labs. The full ranking, Anthropic at 80%, DeepMind at 78%, OpenAI at 67%, and Meta at the very bottom with 64%. The company paying more than anyone to hire is retaining less than everyone it hires. How much more? Individual compensation packages of $200 million to $250 million for top researchers. Mark Zuckerberg personally involved in recruiting calls. Approximately 18 researchers poached from OpenAI and DeepMind at a combined cost exceeding $1.5 billion. Meta's superintelligence lab sources nearly 40% of its members from OpenAI alone. And yet, in 2025, 4.3% of Meta's top-tier AI talent left for competitors. Researchers inside FAIR, the fundamental AI research division that LeCun built, described the environment as slowly dying. Individual researchers cycling through 7 different managers in 3 years. Do the math on that. An average of 5 months per reporting relationship. You cannot build anything meaningful in 5 months. You cannot even learn who to trust in 5 months. Here is the paradox, and I want you to sit with it because it reveals something real about how organizations actually function. Meta is simultaneously the highest bidder and the lowest retainer in the AI talent market. This is not a compensation problem. It is a culture problem that compensation cannot solve. Think about professional sports for a moment. The teams that overspend on star free agents often underperform, not because the talent is mediocre, but because they ignored team chemistry. They bought the stats and forgot the culture. Meta is running the exact same playbook, paying $250 million for individual researchers while simultaneously surveilling its existing workforce. The higher the compensation package, the louder the signal being broadcast internally. Culture does not matter here, only headlines matter. And this brings us to the third warning sign, what I call the culture cost ratio. When your retention rate is 64% and your compensation rank is number 1 in the industry, you are not buying talent. You are renting desperation at a premium. The same company that pays more than anyone to attract AI researchers is also the company where researchers cycle through 7 managers in 3 years. No paycheck on earth survives that equation, not because the money is insufficient, because the math of dignity does not solve with a wire transfer, which brings us to the darkest chapter. Because when a company cannot retain talent through culture and cannot buy loyalty through compensation, there is only one direction left to turn: control. In April 2026, Meta launched the Model Capability Initiative, MCI. The name is bland. The program is the opposite of bland. MCI records keystrokes, mouse movements and clicks, periodic screen captures. And this is the part that is hard to say with a straight face. It scrapes content from employee Gmail accounts, Google Chat, and Meta's own internal communication platform. The stated purpose: training AI models on employee behavior data. Read that sentence again. The company is training its AI on its own employees' private communications. Over 1,600 employees signed a formal petition opposing this. Software engineers, research scientists, product designers. Flyers appeared in Meta offices with a single devastating question printed on them. Do you want to work in an employee data extraction factory? In the UK, Meta employees began formal unionization through UTAL, the United Tech and Allied Workers Union. In American big tech culture, that is almost unthinkable. This is not Amazon warehouse workers organizing. This is six-figure engineers at one of the most valuable companies on Earth deciding that a union is their best option. Meta's response to the backlash was to offer a 30-minute pause button. You can temporarily stop the monitoring for half an hour, but you cannot permanently opt out. Think about what that design choice communicates. We know this makes you uncomfortable. We are going to do it anyway. Here is a pause button so we can pretend you have a choice. Then it got worse. A security breach temporarily exposed the monitoring data, private conversations, prompts, transcripts, performance evaluations to any employee inside the company. The surveillance system, designed to extract value from employees briefly, made those employees' most intimate workplace data visible to every single one of their colleagues. MCI is not a policy. It is a philosophy made visible. When a company surveils its own workforce to train the same AI it claims will augment human capability, it has stopped seeing employees as partners and started seeing them as raw material. This is the logical endpoint of the Gulag logic. First, you devalue their work. Then you extract their data. Now, I need to tell you about something that is almost funny. Almost. An anonymous Meta employee built an internal tool called Claudionomics. It is a leaderboard, a game, that tracks and ranks AI token consumption across the entire company. Think of it as fantasy football for burning money. In a single 30-day period, Meta employees consumed between 60 and 74 trillion tokens. Let me write that out so it lands. 74 trillion tokens. A single employee, one individual, consumed 2.81 trillion tokens, the equivalent of running a GPT-4 class model continuously for weeks on end. The monthly cost of all this, roughly $221 million. Annualized, that is about $2.65 billion. A number large enough to fund an entire mid-sized AI startup being burned internally on experimentation that absolutely nobody was tracking until one employee got curious and built a spreadsheet. Here is the punchline. Meta had previously tied employee performance evaluations to AI usage metrics. They were effectively requiring staff to demonstrate heavy AI consumption as part of their job rating. Months later, just months, the company was forced to impose token usage caps on approximately 6,000 employees. The transition from you must use more AI to you must use less AI happened so fast that internal policies actively contradicted each other at the same time. Not that I know anything about running a trillion-dollar company, but I do know that when your internal policies reverse so fast that employees need a game leaderboard just to track the chaos, something has gone structurally wrong. Claudionomics is not a funny anecdote. It is a diagnostic, unsupervised consumption, no clear return on investment framework, a culture of gamification over governance, an abrupt reversal when reality collides with the spreadsheet. The difference is scale. The internal token problem costs $2.65 billion a year. The external AI strategy costs $135 billion a year. Same pattern, different decimal point. On the 12th of June 2026, Mark Zuckerberg issued a company-wide memo. Given the complexity of these changes, he wrote, "We made mistakes and will almost certainly make more." He described applied AI engineering as a waiting room, a place for talented people to stay until other roles materialize in the months ahead. Let me read that back to you. The CEO calls it a waiting room. The engineers call it the Gulag. Same place, same function. Two names. And the distance between those two names, that gap is exactly the trust deficit that no amount of GPU spending can fill. CTO Andrew Bosworth went further in his own communication. He called the rollout atrocious. He admitted, direct quote, "We broke employee trust." That is a remarkable sentence coming from a man who, just months earlier, had told dissatisfied employees to quit if they did not like the changes. Something shifted. Even the architects of this system could see what they had built. Then, on the 1st of July 2026, less than 3 weeks after the apology memo, Meta announced Meta Compute. It is a cloud service that rents out excess GPU capacity to other companies. The stock jumped 10% on the announcement. Best single-day performance in over a year. Headlines called it a brilliant strategic pivot. But CoreWeave, a GPU cloud competitor, dropped 17% the same day. Nebius fell 10%. The semiconductor index fell more than 6%. The market understood what the press release obscured. Meta bought more GPUs than it knows how to use, and is now admitting it by renting them out to competitors. This is not a new business line, born of strategic genius. This is inventory liquidation at trillion-dollar scale. It is the AI equivalent of a retailer opening an outlet store. Because the warehouse is overflowing with product, nobody is buying. The pivot is the admission, just dressed in a press release. So let me leave you with something you can actually use, because understanding what happened at Meta is interesting. But recognizing the pattern before it happens again, that is what separates spectators from people who see the world clearly. Here are the 5 warning signs, 5 things to look for in any company, whether you work there, invest there, or just want to understand whether the leadership knows what it is doing. Number 1. Leadership continuity with past failures. When the same executives who oversaw a major capital destruction event are reassigned to lead the next one, the failure is institutional, not individual. Maher Saba from Reality Labs to Applied AI Engineering is the case study. If you see the same names showing up on the next big bet after they already burned the last one, the company has learned nothing. The second loss is just the first loss repeated at higher volume. Number 2. Competing on price, not product. When a company's AI strategy is defined by capital expenditure announcements rather than model quality benchmarks, it is signaling loudly that it cannot win on merit. Anyone can write a check. Not everyone can build a model that ranks honestly. Number 3. The culture cost ratio. When retention rate is the inverse of compensation rank, paying more than anyone while keeping less than everyone, the culture premium has turned negative. At that point, every dollar you spend on recruiting is a dollar spent advertising the problem you refuse to fix. 64% retention at number 1 in spending. That ratio is not a statistic. It is a verdict. Number 4. Internal language divergence. When the CEO's word for a program and the employee's word for the same program are separated by a canyon waiting room versus gulag, the organization is operating 2 realities simultaneously. One of them is false, and the false one is always the one in the memo. When the language gap gets this wide, the leadership is not leading. It is performing. Number 5. The pivot as admission pattern. When a new strategic initiative is functionally a solution to a problem, the company denied having metacompute as the answer to GPU overcapacity. The pivot reveals what the strategy concealed. Companies that are winning do not need to rebrand their excess inventory as a business model. If you understand these 5 signs, then you will not be the one panicking when the next corporate implosion hits the headlines. You will be the one who saw it coming 6 months early because you recognized the pattern while everyone else was still reading the press releases. Because here is what this entire Meta story really teaches us. Success leaves clues, but failure leaves a blueprint. And if you learn to read that blueprint, you do not just avoid the crash. You start seeing the opportunity that everyone else is running from. If you want to learn how these same patterns are playing out across the rest of the AI industry, because I promise you, Meta is not the only company running the same playbook. Make sure to subscribe, okay? I will see you over there.